Hello, I'm just going to give everyone a minute to tune in. So, I hope everyone's having a wonderful Sunday so far. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get started and introduce myself. I am Thundra, and I am the creator of the website thundrasr.com. I am a shaman and transformational mentor, and I'm really happy to see there's a couple people tuning in. So thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to be a part of this group and to be able to be a Sunday speaker. I feel like it's a true honor, and yeah, I'm really excited about it. So today I would like to speak about a very important topic, which is that of boundaries. The title of today's talk is Why Saying No is a Sacred Space, and how boundaries play an important role in our lives as partners, friends, and spiritual teachers. So first, we really need to understand the importance of boundaries. So boundaries allow you to create a sacred space, not only for yourself, but for others you're interacting with. So this is actually how we can communicate our needs, and in return, this is how we can respect the needs of others in our lives. And if we are honestly communicating our needs, we can also be able to hold space for people to do the same for us. It's just kind of like a way of, it's definitely a spiritual practice and a type of communication that I feel is something that's very important. Whether you're on a spiritual path or you're just looking for a healthier life and better interactions with your friends and partners. So honesty and integrity and authenticity is definitely key to connecting to our soul self and allowing others the freedom to connect with us on that level. So many of us have been raised to be really polite and often very self-sacrificing. And of course, this can be a wonderful thing to be of service to others. But if we are doing this at the expense of our own needs, this can actually really open the door to resentment and anger and frustration. And that can lead to a lot of unconscious manifestation of these feelings through our behaviors. So an example of that would be, say that you're feeling angry at your partner for not being able to read your mind. So I know I'm guilty of this, and I know a lot of us are. And so we have to remember, like, if we haven't actually communicated our needs, but we're expecting someone to kind of read our mind, and just assume that they should know what we want, and then we get mad at them if they don't, and then maybe we get a little bit angry, and then we might shut down, and then the lines of communication are even, shut down even further. So this is kind of a snowball effect that can lead to more resentment and frustration, and it just creates like a really messed up situation within your partnership if you're in one. So it's really important to remember that all of these kind of situations in a partnership could be remedied just by communicating our needs and our boundaries in a healthy and positive way. So, excuse me, if you are uncomfortable with something, I just want to remind you, like, it's your job to know how to communicate this. So it takes practice. It's not easy, especially if we have grown up in really codependent or abusive families. It can actually be really triggering for people to learn how to communicate their needs, because they may have shut those down all of their life because it was a way to protect themselves and kind of stay hidden in the background. So I know confrontation is hard for a lot of people, but confrontation and honest communication are two different things. So I think it's really important to remember that this is a spiritual practice to communicate our boundaries with the people that we care about and the people we come in to interactions with in different areas of our life. And when we're clear in our needs it really takes the pressure off of you. And then, so if you're able to communicate your needs and your boundaries in a healthy way, you can kind of step back and say, okay, I'm in my authenticity, I'm in my integrity, I've done my job. And then you get to do something really cool, which is you get to observe the actions of others to see if they actually respect that. So if they don't respect that, then that could be an indication that you may need to take a look and see, like, is this person really meant to be really in my life, especially if it's somebody, you're kind of close with. If they're not able to really respect what you've communicated as far as your boundaries, that can be, like I said, an indication that you may have to reevaluate their position in your life. So you need to be really clear with yourself on what you are willing to tolerate or not. So as part of self-care toward ourselves, we should always be asking like what we're comfortable with and what we aren't comfortable with. So it's really important, I think, as part of a spiritual practice to really go deep into meditation with yourself and ask yourself, like, what is it we really want in our life? And what are we comfortable with? What are we not comfortable with? And to really honor ourselves by saying, I'm not going to tolerate this in my life, and I don't have to. Sometimes we think we have to tolerate certain behaviors, and truly we don't. So also, it's good to ask ourselves if we're just going through the motions in our relationships and doing like what we feel is expected of us as part of our roles, whether as children, as parents, as partners, as employees, and if you're deeply uncomfortable with something, that is usually an indication that your soul is trying to communicate to you to explore that further and find out why. So this is a spiritual practice that can lead to uncovering trauma, which then allows you the opportunity to actually heal it. So like I said, it can be very triggering to look at these things within ourselves, but until we're able to look at them, then we can't heal because we don't really know what's there. So this is really, really important as we try to evolve to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. So, trauma that we are unaware of is definitely number one to why we manifest difficult scenarios in our life. And, you're not necessarily responsible for the trauma that was inflicted on you, but as an adult, it is your job to clean it up and heal it and take action that reflects that you are self-aware and you're taking action in a conscious way and exhibiting healthy behaviors. So most of us are really familiar with the importance of teaching our children healthy and safe boundaries, but as adults, we often forget that it's just as important so we can navigate our life interactions in a safe and healthy way. So as partners, are we constantly trying to get our partner to do something that they might be in resistance about? So sometimes we excuse or even overlook our own behaviors because we're so focused on the other person. And, sometimes we excuse that, like, oh, well, we're coming from a place of heart and care, and it's really our intention. But, just because that's your intention, that you might want the best for somebody doesn't mean that it's okay to start dictating what you feel is best for their life. So again, our intentions don't matter if we're overstepping our boundaries with people, and it's not up to us to tell people how to live their lives. And when we do this, it actually leads to a lot of codependency and unbalance in our relationships. Excuse me. So sometimes, again, like we're so concerned with the actions of our partners or our children that we don't see ourselves and our own actions, which when you focus on the self, that's where the real healing work takes place, and that is a real space of empowerment when you do that. So yes, of course, in the instance of marriages and relationships, we're merging with a person. It's not just about us. We have to be willing to compromise. But this is also, that merging is the reason why it is so important to focus on our own actions and healing and communicate our needs in a loving way. But again, it is never our job to change anyone else or tell them how to live their life. That's for them to figure out. So focus on the self is of utmost importance and is where we truly step into our personal power. And when we do this, it puts the power of manifestation in our own hands. And then we show that we are leading by example and we're actually walking our talk. I feel this is the best way to be in service to others because it kind of allows you to be a lighthouse for your soul tribe, and then people will start finding you. So other people will begin to recognize if you have these healthy practices. They'll see you for who you are, and then you'll be attracting people with similar healthy boundaries and practices, and you'll start to recognize each other. And when you do this, you're really building a community based on love, acceptance, and mutual respect. And you will find that the control freaks begin kind of exiting your life. And the reason for this is because your frequencies will definitely start to repel anything that isn't based in that love and mutual respect. So many in the spiritual community have spoken about wanting that spiritual connection with their partner. And that's great if you're both on that path and you're on the same page and pursuing that together. That's definitely a beautiful thing. But it is important to remember that another person's spiritual path or how they are here to experience the world and grow, it may not necessarily look like ours. So I kind of wanted to share an example of this that was a really big learning experience for me, which was with my husband. So I kind of had to discover after a few years of kind of nagging him, like, oh, I'd really like to do meditation together and maybe kind of explore some tantric stuff or whatever. I had this idea of how I wanted them to go. And I had to kind of let go of that because I realized that wasn't for him. His spiritual path is actually writing, and everybody has their own version of what they're here that really connects them to their soul. And like I said, it may not be the same. So I had to really allow my husband the space to find that connection to his soul self through his particular path. And yeah, it's totally different than my path. But as his wife, it is my job to respect that. And another thing that I learned is that sometimes, when we're nagging someone to do something, we're really actually projecting onto that person. So what that means is that if I were saying to him, oh, I wish you'd meditate, I wish you'd watch this really great video, maybe we can do such and such together. Not that he was shutting it down all the time or anything, but I was really kind of obsessed because I was discovering things that worked for me and that were helpful. And I did want to share that with him. Again, it was my intention was good, but I realized I was kind of getting on his nerves. And the reason for that is because I wasn't really practicing at that time. So I noticed a transition when I actually started to sit in my sacred space every day and create my path and get into that space of creativity. I stopped asking him to do those things because it allowed me to step into who I was meant to be and kind of step back and let go and say, all right, this is mine. And he has his version. And so it's really been an improvement in our relationship with each other since I kind of quit being up his ass about getting him to do what I wanted him to do. And again, it created a much healthier space for us to connect with in other ways. And I've also been able to see him grow and change by pursuing his passion and his dreams. So if you sit down and meditate, you might want to ask yourself, How often are you actually doing that? How often are you actually in your spiritual practice? Because like I said, when you're projecting onto the other person, usually that's an indication that you may not be walking your talk. So it's good to really ask yourself, like, are you really practicing what you're preaching? And this is the true freedom that real spirituality will actually bring you, is knowing that when you're in your highest integrity and you're doing everything you can to be the best version of yourself, you find a real comfort level and you create a solid foundation for yourself. And you can totally let go of like worrying about what other people are doing, because you'll realize that once you start diving into your own evolution and your own healing process, that you don't really have time to worry about other people. So it's an interesting thing. There's a lot of stuff for us to dig up and work on. And so once you really get doing that in a deep way, like you realize, like, you really can't worry about others. Like, it's our job to worry about ourselves. And it's definitely not our business to be interfering with someone else's life unless they have actually come and specifically asked you. So, in fact, inappropriately inserting yourself into their karma is what you would be doing if you just start going and like trying to offer, help and assistance to people who haven't actually asked for it. This can create a really chaotic environment for not only yourself, but for other people. Because if you're meant to be there, there will be clear indication that you are, and they will come and ask you. So, I was thinking, like, in the example of, because I used to do that a lot. This is one of the reasons why I love talking about boundaries, is because these have been really big lessons for me. Sometimes we feel like we have a message for someone and we really want to share it with them, but maybe they're not meant to hear that from us. And actually we could be driving them away from something good because we didn't respect their boundaries. So a good example of this would be like religious people knocking on your door, which is something I used to do. I actually grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, so it's probably why I had such terrible boundaries, because I was conditioned my whole life to go knock on someone's door and try to get them to convert to my faith. And like, people are really turned off by that stuff. Sometimes, they won't say they are, but there's a reason why there are jokes about Jehovah's Witnesses coming to your door and people hiding or slamming the door in their face, because it really is a turn off for people. And it is because it is a lack of boundaries. You're literally going to someone's house and then trying to project your idea of God onto a person and telling them if they don't accept that, like, there's going to be consequences. Like, this is not a very loving thing. So something that I really suggest, and I actually made a vow to the universe, is to wait to be asked. So we need to learn to ask exactly for what we need from others, and vice versa. So when someone comes and asks you a question, this is a very clear indication that you do have karma in the situation, and then you're free to answer their questions and provide guidance, again, if they have specifically asked for you to. So whether this is a friend, a partner, or like if you're a spiritual teacher and you have students, like, wait for them to come and ask you, because more than likely, the people who know you, if they know kind of what you're about, they will approach you if they want that information. And this is incredibly, incredibly important for spiritual teachers. And I want to talk about this for a little bit, because there's a trend in many spiritual communities that I've seen, and it's just a complete lack of boundaries. So whether it's spiritual advice that's being offered and the person hasn't been asked, sending healing to someone without their permission, this is a huge one and a huge no-no, and a lot of people don't really know this. So I was thinking about how there's a lot of Facebook groups out there. I'm sure some of you are familiar with them, where you'll see somebody post a picture of maybe like their grandmother in the hospital, or their friend has an illness or something like that, and they'll post their photo and say, you know, can everybody send prayers or Reiki, you know, or healing vibes or whatever. And a lot of people don't even stop to think, like, did that person even really want that? Has that person even asked? So it's like, you know, in the case of somebody else doing it on behalf of another person, again, the intentions don't matter. Actions do. So something I've learned personally, and I think a lot of you can relate to, is that sometimes we have to go through really difficult circumstances to kind of get to that place of, you know, quote unquote enlightenment, or really learning a very difficult lesson and really getting to that understanding from something we've been through that was a challenging situation for our life. And if you have 1,000 people like from Facebook, and they're sending you healing and prayers without your knowledge, like, these people could actually be interrupting and prolonging that person's learning process. That's a whole lot of energy going toward that person who may not even be aware of it. And that can be really confusing and disruptive to their life and their personal timeline that they may have mapped out for themselves with their own soul. So again, who are we to interfere with that? And it's not up to us to decide whether or not to do this for someone else. Energy is no different than anything on the physical realm. And I did want to share an example of this. And I have shared this before on my own channel, where someone kind of shows up to your house. Say you like just moved into a house, and a neighbor just like shows up with a dinner they've cooked for you, okay? And they just let themselves in, and they just start setting up like your kitchen table, and they're like, you know, got this dinner, and they haven't even asked you, okay? So again, a good intention, but maybe you're on your way out, or you're really tired and you don't want company. And I think we could all agree that we don't want people just literally barging into our house without permission and unannounced. So why would we ever think that this is okay to do energetically to people? So the same applies with energy. The body is the temple, is the home, and is the sacred space of the person. And it is never our job to energetically do something to them without their permission. It's a violation of their space. So in the instance of spiritual teachers, one of the clearest ways that you will know you have actual karma with a person is if the person is going to come to you and ask, and they give you payment. This is one of the reasons why payment is so important to receive as a spiritual teacher, because they're paying you for a service, and right there that sets the boundary and shows that you have a part to play in this for sure. It also shows that they will put value on the information and healing or whatever services is that you have to offer. And an example of this is that, you know, one of my teachers who I've been working with now for several years, I learned a lot about boundaries from him. And, you know, I never talk to him unless it's in a paid session. And I consider him to be like my spiritual father. We're very, very close. But that's a boundary that he set and is part of the way things are with him. And, you know, there have been like 2 or 3 times over the course of like 3 years that I had like a straight up emergency, and he was there. It's not like he's not there for me, or it's all about the money or anything like that. But, you know, knowing what to expect, knowing that I've paid for the service and that he always shows up for me, he's never canceled on a session or anything like that, has shown me like that he really he's literally like one of the only people in my life that has showed up for me the way he does. And it really made me put the focus on myself and valuing my growth, valuing his services, valuing the information that he was, sharing with me. And it's really hard to do this, like a lot of us have been in or are in financial, troubles these days. And it's really hard to sometimes remember, because we haven't been taught this, that we need to really invest in ourselves. And there have been times when I was like at my lowest and I couldn't afford a session with my teacher, and it was really hard for me, but I understood the rules were there, and they not only allowed me to search within myself, to actually find the answers within myself, but it actually gave me a goal to like literally work my ass off so that I could connect with him in session and then get more of his teachings to apply to my life. So had he just kind of come in and out and done whatever he wanted, that could have created a lot of confusion for me and a lot of people. So again, when you have those boundaries with a student, it allows you to open up to a whole new level of people who truly do value themselves, and they value your teachings and your information, and they value each other. And the teacher isn't like inserting themselves into a situation that they don't belong in. So again, it was like for me, this was a huge learning process because it made me prioritize my growth. And there was no room for any kind of resentments or anything like that to happen, because like I said, if he would sometimes talk to me without a paid session, and sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't, you could see how that could create a situation where the person's like, well, why are they talking to me sometimes and sometimes they're not? And this time he didn't get back to me. Did I do something wrong? Did I offend him? None of that happens whenever you set those boundaries clearly with your students as a spiritual teacher. So on the physical level, so I want to get into this a little bit. Boundaries definitely are not just about who's coming into your reality field and who you're interacting with. This is important for the function of your body in a healthy way. So I've actually spoken about this in detail in one of my YouTube videos, which I'm actually going to link below when I'm done with this video. But I talk a little bit about leaky gut and autoimmune diseases, which are kind of a big deal right now. A lot of people are suffering with that. And leaky gut, when you think about it, is you're eating and you've got food particles literally permeating into your bloodstream, right? So you're literally don't have boundaries within your own body. Your own cells start attacking different parts of your body in autoimmune diseases, and it's a really chaotic environment. So there is an actual ancient spiritual practice that I have worked with over the last couple of years that I do share in this video, and I encourage you guys to go check it out when we're done, because what this does, this specific practice allows you to kind of enter your own reality field at the quantum level. So you go into meditation and you chant this particular rune. Some of you guys are probably familiar with runes. They're from the Norse indigenous tradition, and this particular rune is called Thurisaj, and this is the rune of Thor, and it represents the electromagnetic field. So if you know anything about that, the electromagnetic field is what surrounds all of the atoms. It's what keeps my hands from going through each other, or when I walk across my living room floor, that I don't fall through the floor, because you've got a literal boundary. So when you chant this rune, it actually creates that boundary with you, going down to the molecular level inside of your body. So it starts a healing process from the inside out. So whether it is the physical body, the mental, the emotional, the energetic body, this rune will create a powerful boundary for you, so it can create a lot of healing within yourself. Or if you have people in your life that are kind of like control freaks, you may find that they'll just kind of exit your life, because again, the frequencies will be kind of like repelling each other. And there just won't be room for that in your own life when you're practicing this on a regular basis. So how do you learn to say no? It really takes practice, and practice means you have to do it. And you have to kind of like, you know, like anything else, it may be really hard in the beginning. It may make you extremely uncomfortable. For me personally, what I did to start saying no was I would, you know, depending on the situation. Now, like if you're literally talking to a person, like you may fumble over your words a lot. Even for me, like what I would do is kind of like write down what I wanted to say in response. And I would find that I would get like really wordy. I would just go on and kind of like come up with excuses and different things. It was really, really challenging for me. There were times I literally had like complete emotional breakdowns because I did not know how to say no. I didn't know how to honor myself in that way. But again, this is a practice, and practice makes perfect. So it's something that you have to start with and just learn how to do, and you'll become better and better over time. So, you know, this allows you to say no in a tactful and loving way will definitely allow you to create a sacred space within your reality field. And anyone who comes into it has to respect that sacred space or they're not welcome. So this isn't a judgment. It's just kind of how it is. It's like you're standing as a pillar in sovereignty of what you expect, you know. And again, this doesn't mean not compromising. This doesn't mean like a person does one thing and then you're like triggered, you know, totally triggered out and you're like, get the hell out of my life. Like, it just means that when you get clear on this, if people don't respect it, then you know you have done everything you can do. You're in your integrity, and if they don't get it and they continue to disrespect it, then you're free to walk away from that, and you don't have to apologize for that in any way, shape, or form. So I hope that a little bit of this was helpful. I am really, really so very grateful to have been here. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any questions, just go ahead and leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to answer any questions you guys have about the details of this, if anything wasn't clear. And I hope that some of the things that I have shared with you today has been helpful. And I really encourage you again to go check out that YouTube video where I do show how to do this ancient spiritual practice to help you with your boundaries in body, mind, and spirit. And I'd also like to invite you to visit my website, thundrasr.com. I do have tools and different sessions available at all price points for people who really are ready to dive in and explore their own path to healing and unlocking their spiritual gifts. I'm very grateful for your time and energy. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a huge pleasure and an honor. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. Wherever you are, like, take care. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.